Good morning. This is Norma Cowie here once more for Norma Talks. This month I have been covering basics. We have looked at thinking processes, how we think, how our subconscious works with our conscious and superconscious, how our feelings, how important they are, because from my perspective, this is a feeling planet. And this is in a way quite unusual, but we can really discuss that another time. And this week, I want to talk about another thing that's very, very important. What I found was that I was trained and taught as in the early teaching that we create our reality. And as the years went by, I began to think about that. Like, okay, how do I create my reality? And I looked very closely at what was happening to me, what was happening to friends, what were happening to other people I knew. And when I began to realize that the majority of time we are creating or making decisions, which is usually what creation begins, based on what has been happening to us. It's not that we created kind of from scratch. It's like we are reacting to what is happening. And so in a way, yes, we're creating our reality by how we react to whatever's been going on. Now, the thing is, how can we react the way we react? Now, yes, a lot of it's with what we've already talked about in the last couple of weeks, how we think, how we feel, the decisions that have been previously made in relation to our life. So when something comes up, we react. So that's why self-development, self-growth is very, very important. Because if you understand how you operate, how you work, how you can decide to change it. I know in my life, when I've had a situation come up, which is like maybe the second or the third time, I say to myself, how did I react the last time this happened? And then I will make the decision to react differently to see how that outcome would work. Now, in a way, that is creating my reality because I've changed a line, you might say, of behavior and thinking and being. So it's really important to recognize, first of all, that you are a complex human being. Human beings have this thinking going on, there's feelings going on, and then we deal with other people who also have thinking and feeling going on. Now, excuse me, most of your beliefs, now again, I'm saying what I believe, what I have found works for me and my clients and students, is that you have made most of the decisions that you are running your life on, I found, is that are past life based. And so consequently, we tend to repeat patterns. So how do we change the patterns that become very, very important? And yes, the other two segments kind of cover some of that to a degree. But I think it's really important to be aware of how you really do respond to your life. One of the things that really, you might say, impacted me a lot was when I was studying the Karpman triangle. The Karpman triangle says we have three positions. We could be a rescuer, we could be a dictator, or we could be a victim. Now, one of the things with the rescuer is always, I will help. So in other words, they put themselves aside to a large degree and they will help. Now, it's not saying that we don't become we don't rescue, or we don't help, I should say, we don't help. The key is whether we're actually rescuing, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. Then we have the dictator. The dictator is the person who likes to be in control, believe they know every answer in the book, and they often preference things, well, I know, or they will tell you how and what it is. I also have found over the years that very often a dictator gets very controlling, and often a finger or something will come up to say, I am right, to emphasize their rightness. And then there is the victim. The victim, it feels they have no power, they don't know what to do, poor me, come help me, come rescue me, or tell me what to do, either way. Now, the thing is, we're not just all one of those. We're probably, to some degree, all of those in different situations. Usually we find, excuse my hoarseness here. We usually find there are two we operate with a lot, like a rescuer victim or a rescuer or a dictator victim. Rescuer dictator doesn't usually work as much together, but you will move into a dictator when you feel you know the answer and the other person doesn't. So you kind of run around this triangle. I found that as I explored myself, as I looked where I was doing different ways and different things, rather than coming from a centered place, I was very much a rescuer, and I was also very much a victim at places and time. Then I would be at times a dictator. So it's really interesting to find out which one you do the most. And there is quite a bit of information on the Karpman triangle on the net. And it's, I think, important to understand. The other thing I found was really good was kind of like a seesaw effect of, are you in balance or are you dictating? And it kind of all fits into the Karpman triangle, but it's really being aware of where you are. How are you making, when a situation comes up, what you're going to make a decision. Now, one of the things that tarot is, as most of you know, that's where I began my journey. And it's showing me over and over again, everything I've learned is there. When a decision comes up, we always have a choice. We can choose to deal with the situation, or we can choose to stay in confusion. Confusion often comes where we don't know what to do. We can be, there's the old thing, we're going to have a response of freezing or a flight or whatever. I know in times, sometimes when things are said to me, I will freeze. It's like I don't know the answer right away, and I don't pretend to know them. So it's kind of freeze because I don't know how to respond. So your ability to respond is really important, especially when it comes down to creating your responsibility in relation to your life. You are, as an adult, or at least this doesn't apply to children, as an adult, you have the ability to be able to respond, which is responsibility. So how are you responding is really important. So a situation comes up, are you claiming what you really want and stating or doing what it is you really want? Or are you on the confusion of wanting to be right or not running, or what am I supposed to do? And people, when you get confused, you know how it is. Your mind goes 100 miles a minute. It runs around. You're never quite sure. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a... I've had a little bit, even more than usual, problem with my throat the last week. So, but anyway, we're getting there. The ability to run and make decisions. Conflict. I made some notes down on my pad here. How do we handle conflict? Do we run away from it? Do we go in with both barrels, blazing? Do we go for power, which would be the dictator role? Or do we go to resolve? I remember, and I took some conflict resolution information, and it's really to find that medium, finding out where the person is really coming from, because very often conflict, we have inner conflict, of course, but we also have outer conflict with other people. And how do we deal with that? Now, one of the things, as I was looking at how we respond, because that's the sword, for me, that's the sword symbology in the tarot. And very often it shows very early, if we don't want to know them, we just block everything out. We don't look, we don't know, we just kind of get very much inside. And that brings disappointment and hurt. But one thing I love about the sword symbology is that it always shows you the way out. It says, the answer is inside. Go inside and figure it out, sort it out. Come to be aware, because if not, you're going to create more conflict, more hassle, just more and more. And so the important thing here is to learn how to let go. Now, one of the things I have found in responding is that when we have a belief or an attitude or a sense that's really important to us, it's very difficult to let it go. So in a way, we're going through life with our fists like this. Whenever this topic or area comes up, and we don't let go of the old. We don't let go at all. And so we will fight. We will fight and fight. And we may have lots of little battles, and we may not win the war at all. Because was it stubbornness? Is it just not wanting to admit that maybe there's another viewpoint? Or is it because we just want to hold on to that because we believe in it so strongly? The other person, if it's of another person, is really important to be aware that they have a right for their viewpoint, even if you don't agree with it, even if you don't think that's all right. Good debating, good decision, communication can help tremendously. But when you go into a defensive mode to protect what you believe, what you want, and you have those kind of battles on ideology sometimes, if it's not done easily and completely easy, taking all people into account, it can be quite fractious and can be quite damaging. But you see, again, the whole thing is being able to let go and look at things from a different perspective. And this is why we have to be able to be flexible, to be able to look and not just feel that the end is here, not just to get so defensive that you don't see anything else, because all it does is make you sad. When we look at defensiveness, is having a barrier up because we don't want to be heard, we don't want to hear, we don't want to know. But you know what really happens is that really we get depressed because we're not expressing or being honest with ourselves. The inner part of us, the real inner essence, knows our truth. That knows where and how you're wanting to go. One of the things I work a lot with my clients in the energy transformation work is faith and trust. Because I find the majority of people that I work with don't have faith. And I can't see having faith without having trust. So where do we have faith and trust? In self first. You must have faith and trust in the self. And then in life itself, and then what I call the universal love energy in the universe. Because there's a lot said about having faith. You must have faith. You have faith. But I don't hear people talking about trusting, having faith and trust in the self. Because you're the one that knows what works for you. And when it's somebody else, the dictator will tell you you're supposed to be this way or that way. What happens is actually what they're doing is putting their thing right on top of you rather than making you the victim, basically, saying you're wrong. We're not all wrong. We have a different perspective. It would be we like it when people agree with us. There's no doubt about it. It makes it easy. Oh, yeah, we sit around in agreement. But in our world right now, we have people that are not in agreement on lots of topics. And yet, if we do not feel, hang on, let me just rephrase that. If we do not have an agenda, like if I don't have an agenda that says you have to think this way or be this way, then you can sit down and you can agree to disagree. You can listen and say, well, that is not how I perceive things. And the other person may not be open, doesn't want to hear what you have to say or think. But that is part of being able to respond and to know how to maneuver and move your way through all these different ups and downs and ins and outs that we have. And it's not really intentional when one person for a lot of people, when they'll say something and a person takes homage to it. Oh, how could they say that? Or how can they think that? And that's what I will lynch them back because that's their response. Oh, it doesn't fit into my framework. Now, another thing, I'm just going to add this here. What I began to realize through the work I was doing, or am doing, I should say, is that our intellectual puts nice things in boxes. You may have an intellectual aspect for this thing or that thing or the other thing, but let's just talk about one thing at a time. Who knows what it is? But if you have a box, there's no room for anything new to get in. And your perspective, as i.e. like a dictator, says, this is how it's supposed to be. Because in your mind, intellectually, that box makes sense. And what I find in a lot of my work is breaking down that intellectual box for people to perceive something different. If you've had a belief that life doesn't work for you, that somehow everybody or everything is against you, how do you change that? You can change that in many different ways, but one of them is realizing you've got yourself trapped in that particular belief structure. So that if anybody does come to, quote, rescue, I'll help you, or dictator, I will tell you, either way, you're just going to shut down more. And that is going to create more hassle for you. More feeling sad, more feeling disassociated, more all of those things where you just feel out in the cold. But whatever that intellectual framework that says, but this is how it is, gets reinforced. Because the people out there are telling you you're not right. They're going to tell you, I'll help you by this way, or which often is doing for them, which is not always the best way, or the dictator, this is what I'll do. So that part of you that plays what I call the victim part, and it'll be there somewhere because we hide it through the other elements, is like it's going to get in this little box and it'll have a whole intellectual element as to why that's how your life is. I was listening to someone the other day and telling me all the horrible things that had happened in their childhood. Well, they were a lot older than a child now. But those events, not saying they weren't great, but those events have totally put them in a framework of how they respond to the rest of their lives. Now, we know, for one thing, and this is a knowingness, that as we think, because we've gone over this, what you think, what you feel, goes out in your vibration. So if you cannot move beyond the box that you've put yourself in because this, and this happened, you're not going to, nothing's going to shift too much, no matter what you do. No matter how much therapy, no matter how much other work you might be doing, it's about being able to clear all of those boxes so that you can see there's another reality. And I have found that there is at some point, you're going to break out of that intellectual box. And one of the ways is beginning to take a look, having faith and trust in the self. Your gut feelings, your awarenesses, because all of us have that. We just don't know how to look for it or listen. We just don't do it. We are in a what we say, a revolving door, where we're having situations happen and we respond the same old way over and over again. So there has to be at some point a stop. Let me look at this differently. And I often say, like my students, not my clients, sorry, when they're first introduced to the love force, they kind of go along, but it's like putting your toe into a bath of water and it's a nice temperature and that feels good, but but you don't go right in to the bath water, so you pull away. And that's why I like to work with more than one session, because we want until finally they can just relax and allow that beautiful energy in. Then they still have to make the choice of visiting and reworking to make that energy really straight. And all of a sudden, they're like, miracle, their lives start changing. Things are happening. Things start improving. And it's like their whole faith and trust in life begins to change, because now they can see beyond that little box that their intellect told them was this is how it is. So when you look at your life, what is the box that's holding you in? Sometimes we just accept this is how it is, and I'm comfortable with that, if that is really comfortable for you. but often you're in a box that doesn't serve you at all. So it's a matter of you realizing, yes, how you think is important. What you're feeling, to be able to speak to your body makes it much easier for you to get into those elements, so that when you come to a place of having to make a decision, you can really listen to your own self and not your mind and your intellect. The intellect which says, but it's always like this. This is how it is. Nothing is as it is. Nothing. Gray skies where I live today, very gray skies. Probably going to have rain later, maybe some snow, it says, and rain. But beyond the clouds, and I always have remembered this, there is the sun is shining. So what's stopping the sun from shining in your world? I always know the sun is shining. No matter what, if I can see it or not, if I can feel it or not, I know it's there. So look for your sun. Look for the spark that says, I can open up whatever is dark in my world, whatever is hard in my world. I can have a different perspective and look at it in a different way, because that's what I want for each being. It's what I want for each client. That's what I want for each student and my friends and everybody else, is to recognize that you can break out of the box. You can break beyond the box. And you can become whole in a different way, because you listen to you, because you have faith and trust in yourself, in the life itself, and in the universe. And I think that is today's talk. I want to thank you for listening. I also want to remind you, for those of you that haven't quite cottoned on yet, that I just do a small talk on Sunday called a Sunday Thought. And now my Monday night at 7 p.m., I'm on live with the chat going, and I'm learning how to do that. Oh my goodness, talk about new learning curves. Where I'm doing what I call mental mind treatments, which is like a prayer. I've been a reverend for a long time, and I've been doing these prayers. I just don't use my reverend title, but it's always, I put my reverend cap on today, except when I'm doing weddings. then it's just regular. But it is something that I've learned, and it added to my world a lot. So just know that. I want to thank you for all the support you give me, the subscribing. Remember to ring the bell, because when I come on live for these other shows, if you ring the bell, you'll get a notification that I'm online. But also to the comments, I appreciate them, and I thank you for them, because it keeps my heart warm and gives me more energy to keep on doing what I'm doing. I want to thank you. I bless you, and I'll see you again on Sunday. Bye.